Hi guys, welcome to most tutorials. Today we are looking at fertilization, pregnancy and development. So fertilization simply means the fusion of the male and female sex cells, the nucleus, to form what we call a zygote. Okay, on structure A there, I'm sure you can see we are having our ovum and it's surrounded by a lot of sperms. Okay, so now only one sperm actually wins. So only one sperm gets to reach the nucleus of the ovum there. Once it is in, it then creates a layer in such a way that others cannot come in, because it is the one that has got one, right? So this the sperm swim through the cervix and into the uterus by wriggling movements of their tails. Remember, they've got tails. So they pass through the uterus and they enter your oviduct. Remember, in the oviduct, that's where fertilization takes place. The oviduct is the fallopian tube, right? So if there's an ovum in the oviduct, that's an egg. An ovum is an egg. The sperms stick to its surface. The acrosomes at the head of the sperm secrete enzymes which digest parts of the egg membrane, right? So if those parts of the egg membrane have been digested, the sperm then is able to enter the cytoplasm of the ovum, and then it swims and its male nucleus fuses with the female nucleuses to form a zygote. Remember, these nucleuses, they are all carrying half the characteristics from the mother and half the characteristics from the father. They will fuse to form a zygote, right? So a chemical change occurs at the membrane surface immediately after penetration. Once one sperm have entered your ovum, it creates there's a chemical change that takes place in such a way that no other sperm can actually enter that ovum, right? So the zygote starts to divide into a ball of cells that we call blastula, and it continues to move towards the uterus, where it is going to embed itself to the spongy endometrium. So this embedding, we call it implantation, that lines the uterus, forming the placenta, marking the beginning of pregnancy. Once implantation has taken place, now we are talking of the beginning of pregnancy. So now, on the pregnancy part now, the zygote divides to produce a ball of cells, which we call the blastula, right? And they travel to the uterus, where it is implanted. So the embryo continues to grow and produce new cells that form tissues and organs. After 8 weeks, when most organs are formed, the embryo is called a fetus. So 8 weeks is 2 months, right? After 2 months, so we have what we call a fetus. You know, the blastula cells, they've developed now, and we are now having some little tiny organs. Now we are having a fetus. So as the embryo grows, the uterus enlarges to contain it, to keep it comfortable. So inside the uterus, the embryo is enclosed in an amnion which protects it from damage and prevents unequal pressures from acting on it. So the amnion fluid, it's a fluid. So it's the fluid. So the embryo, in other words, like it's floating inside of a certain fluid. So this fluid is mainly for protection, right? The mother gets hit or bumps or anything, the baby will be protected inside the uterus there. Okay. So now we have what we call the placenta. So we have the oxygen and food needed to keep the embryo alive and growing are obtained from mother's blood by means of what? Of the placenta. That's how important the placenta is. So for the baby to be alive, there has to be the placenta, so that the baby can be able to get food from the mother, from the mother's blood. Doesn't get the direct food, right? It gets the food from the mother's blood. So imagine if the mother is starving and she doesn't have enough nutrients, also the development of the baby will be altered, right? So now let's have a look at our placenta. Here is our embryo, our developing baby, and we're having our mother on this side. So what happens is we have food that comes in, We have got oxygenated blood that comes in. It's going to enter the placenta here, and then it is carried to the baby. The baby utilizes the food and the oxygen, and it brings back the deoxygenated blood, the blood with waste materials, and it's going to go back to the mother, and then the mother will excrete it, right? So now this is done through the umbilical cord. So in other terms, the mother's blood and the baby's blood, they are not in exact contact, right? They just exchange materials through the border that we call the placenta. They use the placenta border to exchange materials, okay? That's why it's very possible for HIV positive moms to give birth to HIV negative moms, though with extra care, right, being put and proper medication being given. So take note, soon after the ball of cells reaches the uterus, we said some of the cells, instead of forming the organs of the embryo, they actually grow into a disc-like structure which we call the placenta. So the placenta, it's a barrier. It separates the mother's blood system from the fetal's blood system, preventing agglutination of maternal and fetal blood. You know, they might actually react. Their bloods may actually react since they are two different individuals. So they are separated by a placenta. So what this placenta does, it allows for the exchange of substances between the mother and the child. So the fetus gets water, it gets nutrients, it gets antibodies, you know, from the mother through the placenta. And it also gives the mother the waste materials like urea and carbon dioxide, and the mother will then cleanse it, right? Take it to the outside environment. So now the placenta is connected to the embryo by the umbilical cord, which contains the umbilical veins and the umbilical artery. So the placenta is actually a filter. It filters many harmful substances, but some viruses, smoke, and alcohol, they are not filtered. They can actually go to the baby and affect the baby at the end of the day. That's why pregnant moms, they are advised not to take any kind of medications, any alcohol, you know, no smoking, because smoking, the smoke cannot be filtered, right? And then lastly, it also secretes hormones, for example, estrogen and progesterone, which stops the menstrual cycle, right? So during pregnancy, the menstrual cycle stops. You will not be having any of your periods for the 9 months of pregnancy. We'll leave it here for today. On our next lesson, we'll be looking at the contraception methods.